Hello, everybody. My name is Len Bear. I am your host of this incredible podcast, Targeted Justice v. Garland, a podcast about an extraordinary lawsuit. This is the last episode of 2023, and I can't believe how much we grew up from literally no subscribers to over 2,000 subscribers. That's not the only thing we accomplished in 2023. We will have a countdown at the end of the show, as every self-respected show does. So please say hello to my co-pilot, attorney for the plaintiffs, Anna Toledo.
Hi, Len, and hi, everyone. Thank you for being here in this last day of the year, really. So, it has been a long path, a long way, but there is such a brilliant one ahead of us. So I'm looking forward to it.
We have a legal segment that I want to start right now. Our legal segment today is called Peter's Report, the day after. The Peters Report is, of course, the report by the U.S. Senate, the Homeland Security Committee, that issued a report about the terrorist screening database. It was called Mislabeled as a Threat. This is the cover of the report. It was filed by U.S. Senator Gary Peters, and it contains a lot of interesting information. But the most interesting part is that the very next day, there was a letter from Gary Peters, the author of the report, and there was a letter from 13 other senators also related to this report. So first we'll go through the letter that Gary Peters signed, and he addressed it to the 6 inspector generals, and he raised 8 elements, so 8 questions. Here's the elements 1 through 4, and I will read them, and I would like, Anna, for you to tell me which part of the answer to that particular question would be meaningful to our case, Targeted Justice v. Garland. Okay, let's go. To what extent have officials adhered to the watch listing guidance when administering the watch list?
Well, definitely. There is one Office of Inspector General of the Department of Justice report 2016-08 where they state point blank that FBI does not comply with agency regulation when nominating people on the watch list and placing them there. And that's one of the reports that we put in our case when we were expressing that the United States Department of Justice was misrepresenting the truth to the court. So it is very important. What the job of the Office of Inspector Generals is basically that, to ensure that the regulations, the laws and the regulations that protect the civil rights of Americans are adhered to. And the first thing that they're going to notice is that they are not adhering to the watch listing guidance because they are placing people on the terrorist screening database without reasonable suspicion, and they have to investigate how did that come about. I have a little bit of objection about, for the word watch list, because as you know, the watch list is a subset of the terrorist screening database. So I really hope they look into the entire nomination and confirmation of people in the entire database, not just on the watch list, because for neither, they don't comply for neither category, but I just don't want the Inspector General office to overlook this part.
Concerning the watch listing, I do have a question. How do we know that the watch listing is a subset of TSDB and not the other way around? Are there any regulations that you can point out to where it says this is what TSDB is and this is what watch listing is?
That's a great question, because that's exactly posted in tievents.org segments of a statement under penalty of perjury by Mr. Timothy Groh, the former deputy director of the Terrorist Screening Center. It was in that document produced in the El Haiti versus Cable case where Judge Trenga, former Judge Trenga of that district court in Virginia, declared terrorist screening database unconstitutional. So it was in that statement, from that statement, that I learned that the watch list is only composed of known and suspected terrorists that are the ones that are comprised in handling codes 1 and 2. And then he had a footnote that said there are other categories within the terrorist screening database that don't comprise known and suspected terrorists and are not screened as such because they are not a threat to national security. So that is where it was an aha moment, where I learned that the TSCB is not equivalent to the watch list. And that is what we have been asking all TIs that are writing to their senators to make this distinction and just make them aware of the fact that while it is unfair that people are being indiscriminately placed on this watch list without meeting the watch listing guidance criteria, there is also an aberration, much bigger subcategories that are not known as the watch list because these people are never even screened when they go to the airport as terrorists.
Wouldn't you want to ask somebody, Mr. Ray, for example, what is your definition of watch list in relation to TSDB, to make everything crystal clear so we have a starting point? This is TSDB, this is watch list, and this is the difference.
Yeah, you just gave me a great idea. We can work on a list of questions for both Mr. Mayorkas and Mr. Ray for when they go back to talk to the members of this committee. And this is really important. This is the same committee that evaluated FBI's misconduct regarding FISA Act Section 702. And we have to help them connect the dots if they haven't done so before, that those 200,000 illegal assessments that the FBI admitted having done is none other than the American portion of the TSDB that constitutes the non-investigative subjects in handling codes 3 and 4. I don't know if they changed their names because they could have just changed the labels on it, but it's just the people on the TSDB that are not on the watch list.
Yes, extremely important. Let's go to number 2. What are the range of impacts on individuals who may match to identities on the terrorist watch list or any of its subsidiary lists?
That seems like a naive question, but that is the gist of what TJB Garland is about. How being placed on this list affects so many aspects of your life, and not necessarily microwaves, not necessarily V2K. We're talking here simple things like opening a bank account, like sending money through Western Union, like getting normal things that take any person 15 minutes and a targeted individual might take 2 hours or not be able to accomplish it. Just the fact of being able to surf through the internet without having the illegal InfraGard and FBI doing surveillance without an Article 3 court issued warrant. Something as simple as that. That falls under that category. And I hope that these senators are clever enough to realize that that is wide range, is a plethora of repercussions that are repugnant to the very essence of freedom and the United States Constitution.
I understand. We haven't gotten to the senator's letter. This is just the Peters letter. The senator's letter is much more comprehensive. So we're just going over the Peters questions. Peters question number 3, to what extent does the terrorist watch list information disseminated amongst departments and agencies improve the effectiveness of screening and vetting activities?
The inspector generals have to do like an audit because, as you know, Mr. Groh admitted that the terrorist screening database had not stopped a single act of terrorism, admitted under oath by him. So it is important that these Office of Inspector Generals, which I'm going to be writing to because they should look into the evidence, the transcripts, the testimony under penalty of perjury of these FBI representatives that admitted what I am telling you. I didn't make any of this up. And so they have to tell them what is the impact. They really have to make an audit of the impact, and particularly the legal cases, because there have been a lot of cases filed that a lot of truth has been put out there, and they can't just look the other way. They have to look at those.
Number 4, to what extent are privacy requirements, civil rights, and civil liberty protections and transparency goals incorporated into the redress process? I know the answer. I know the answer. Sorry, I'm just so excited. I think this is actually not applicable to us because we are not supposed to know.
That's exactly it. You see how much you've learned in a year? And that's one of the things that the court, I mean, if I had been the court, I would have imposed sanctions on the Department of Justice because they falsely stated that targeted individuals had there's a redress proceeding that they can use. But wait a minute, if they never find out that they're on a list, how can they even ask for a redress? And a requirement for the redress proceeding is to have initiated a case with the TREX proceeding. So yeah, at number 4, it is very important because I think something like out of 30,000 redress petitions, something like only 6 are granted, something ridiculous, 6 or 60, something absolutely ridiculous. And let me just tell you so you understand how ridiculous it is from what I read from the documents in the El Haiti. The person submits their petition. It's an exercise in futility. They submit their petition, and then the FBI sends it to whoever it was that nominated them. Oh, please review if this was wrong by you nominating. And of course, they come back and say, no, it's not, I wasn't wrong. And they come back and they just put a seal of approval and say, no, there's nothing to look at here. You stay on the list. So it's not relevant for us, but it's relevant to prove the bad administration and the futility of that process.
Okay, we have 4 more. Are the departments and agencies involved in the watchlisting process keeping track of all encounters that involve watchlist data in a manner that allows them to track the impact on individuals who may match identities on the watch list or its subsidiary lists?
That's a great question that they have to look at, and I'll tell you why. Because in the encounters reported to the FBI, when a policeman, a law enforcement person comes into contact with somebody on the TSTV, they have to report it to the FBI. And he admitted something like 93, it's over 90% that they don't have encounters with people on the TSTV. These are law-abiding citizens. These are not hoodlums that they put on this list. And that's something very significant because it goes to prove the futility of the watch list.
Next question. How do the departments and agencies nominating identities, maintaining the watch list or using the watch list or subsidiary lists ensure that data is only shared to accomplish a legally authorized purpose, is properly stored, and is not maintained longer than necessary?
I don't know if Mr. Peters is aware of the fact that the FBI, that they use private companies to do the targeting of people. I don't know that it is legal to delegate law enforcement functions to a private corporation that has financial interest in putting more people on the list. He doesn't even mention the private corporation interest involved in this entire process. That's one of the things that another Office of Inspector General report commented on how they don't, and this was way back in 2008, how they didn't have good procedure to remove names how there were outdated names, how they didn't have sufficient evidence. I mean, this is something, actually, let me correct myself. The report was 2008-16. It was in 2008 because after 2009, for some reason, the reports have been hidden in the internet, are not published. I have to do a FOIA to get them. I haven't gotten them yet. Since at least 2007, 2008, and 2009, the Department of Justice and Office of Inspector General knew that they were not doing what he's asking there, making sure that the civil liberties and the privacies and the information is properly shown, all of that. Since 2007, they've been denouncing it, and I didn't see a follow-up that it was resolved.
But it makes a lot of sense because when we were looking at the numbers in TSDB, there was a reset in 2008 and 2009, I think, and that is related to those inspections. Number 7 actually answers your previous question. Which federal, state, local, and private sectors entities have access to terrorist watch list information?
And that we know that since they distributed through the National Crime Information Center, it's distributed to over 18,000 law enforcement agencies, 503 private corporations, and 440 organizations. We're talking here, when you're going to rent a car, they know you're a suspected terrorist. When you are going to Walgreens to get your medication, when you are going try to send some money, the interference, which without the private corporations doing it, as you and I know, we have an advisory board member that was kicked out of an Airbnb because she was deemed a security threat. So we're talking here major impacts on our lives that are carried out by these 533 corporations. I don't know if they report back to the FBI and to the fusion centers. Oh, look, we got brownie points. This is what we did. I don't know if they do it or not. But there's certainly a communication between the fusion centers and the private corporations doing this. If it wasn't that communication, there wouldn't be an action by the private actor. That is something that I'm going to make sure that Mr. Peters knows about this, because, we can actually include affidavits of people that have been told this. And all he has to do is, bring me the terrorist screening database. I want to take a look at it. That's all he has to do. And then he can corroborate what we're going to write to him.
Here's my thought of the day. If I were Gary Peters for just one day, I would formulate that question: which federal, state, local, and private sector entities does the FBI involve in the process of government defamation?
That is exactly it. Yes. Like Kayla K, she was a great YouTuber, and YouTube just out of nowhere shut down her channel. But one of the things that she very interesting said, everybody and their mother, even the guy standing in the corner, has access to the watch list except for me, even though I'm there.
Unfair, unjust. There's no other way to say it. Number 8, we're finally at the end of Gary Peters' list. To what extent have nominating agencies implemented quality assurance practices to monitor and audit the information they submit to the watch list and ensure that information is accurate, relevant, timely, and complete?
That should help us, our case, because that's what we have been saying, that people are put there for improper motives. But again, if he just limits it to the watch list, that's why I'm going to be writing about it, because he cannot limit it to the watch list, because like you had the data you got on the El Haiti versus Cable spreadsheet, that was just watch list information. They did not provide the information on the non-investigative subjects. And that is the most illegal part of the terrorist screening database. And that's what I'm not so sure, even though these questions are very on point, I'm not so sure the senator knows the distinction.
So we need to educate him, and we need to educate all the other senators. So this is the end of the Gary Peters letter. On the same day, December 20th, 13 senators signed the following letters. And I put up the pictures of all the senators, and you can see all the names, and they were all a part of the Democratic Party. And I have a question. Aren't Republicans interested in this issue? Aren't the Republicans have been on top of the FBI and Mr. Reagan questioning all his activities?
Here's the thing, and even Senator Peters in Michigan, there is a huge amount of TIs and a huge amount of Muslims. So they are very much affected by what the misuse of the watch list and the terror screening database is. Okay. These people, I guess that they are sympathizing with a Muslim community that has been so discriminated against and so unfairly treated regarding the watch list. The profiling going on has been atrocious for the past 20 years against this community. So I think that they are sympathizing with them. Now that this report is out in the open, the cat is out of the bag, and there's a lot of questions to be asked because they have been marginalized and they have been unfairly treated. I have to say to you that thanks to the effort of the Muslim community, we have been able to gather the data that we are using, a lot, at least half the data that we're using to prove the illegality of placing innocent people on the watch list. You know, it has been the work of CARE and El Haiti versus Cable. There's a huge, even Kovac Ray, there's been a lot of good cases that have set precedents and have marked important parts of the chronology of this terror screening database in the judicial realm. So I think that's what responds to that. What surprises me is that we already know that Senator Johnson is a targeted individual because he has Savannah syndrome. And like you know, unless you are attacked with, what is the correct term?
Directed pulsed radio frequency energy in the microwave range.
Exactly. Okay. Well, unless you're attacked with that, you don't get what is formerly known as Havana syndrome, and that now is non-kinetic lesion, right?
Non-kinetic brain injury. You're learning from me as
Yeah.
I am learning from you, Anna. This is the true collaboration.
I love it. So, but here's the important part, because this podcast is so important in communicating this language to our community that has been so disenfranchised and being called crazy and marginalized. And I just want to communicate that if we communicate with the correct language, it's harder for the criminals to call you crazy. So that I love learning from you. So, but going back to the Republicans, our internal polls in targeted justice demonstrate that it is 5 times more likely that you'll be targeted if you're a conservative than if you're a liberal. That's our numbers. The numbers don't lie. Okay. So we have Johnson, who is targeted. We know of other people in Congress that are targeted, but I'm not going to say their names, but I know at least of one who has personally spoken to somebody like you who is very well versed on targeting, but they don't want to come out of the targeting closet. So I don't know why the Republicans are not doing their part here. I have to admit, I was very disappointed with the Weaponization Committee and Jim Jordan, because I think that the biggest weaponization of the United States government is the Targeted Individual Program. And it is a disservice to this nation that the Weaponization Committee did not address it.
This is truly a bipartisan issue. Yes, Mr. Abbas at CARE, if you're listening, we have common goals and we can coordinate our efforts. And I hope the Republicans will wake up to the issue, because it is truly a bipartisan issue. So let's go to the letter. The letter I found to be very comprehensive. First of all, it is addressed to the following people. This is a different group of people that Gary Peters writes to, but it reminds me of the list of defendants in targeted justice v. Garland. I see the very, very familiar names, Garland, Ray. These are people that we assume in official and in the individual capacity. And then what stood out to me right off the beginning, the watch list is managed by the Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI. Threat Screening Center, TSC, previously called the Terrorist Screening Center, also TSC. This is a term that we learned from this Senate report for the first time. And this time, in this letter, I saw a reference where this TSC, which is another TSC, came from. The reference listed is the U.S. Department of Justice, Federal Bureau of Investigation, NCIC Technical and Operation Update that was released in June of 2021. And I actually looked at I found the document, and this is what it says. Effective January 4th, 2021, the Terrorist Screening Center, TSC, was renamed the Threat Screening Center, TSC. In conjunction with their name change, the TSC also requested to rename the known and suspected terrorist file to the Threat Screening Center file. And additional language changes were also made throughout the file at the direction of the TSC to ensure all information was accurate and up to date. This is bureaucracy at its best. I think this TSC becomes TSC. We're moving categories around. This is a way for them to hide people in different categories, which they're really trying to. They don't want to show the judge that targeted individuals are really in the TSDB. So they are renaming things, but this is an internal document. Never in our filings and in the government defendant filings, they use the term Threat Screening Center. They accepted our language, Terrorist Screening Center, because this is the language in the Executive Presidential Order number 6.
Not only did they accept it, they repeated it throughout their motions to dismiss, etc. They refer to the Terrorist Screening Center. This is another misleading. It's like you say, it's to hide people, it's to shuffle people around, it's to hide liability, because this is what's happening. They already know that, as I repeat and say it again and again, the cat is out of the bag and the liability is out there. And they're just trying to make it hard for people to have their day in court. And they're shuffling, they're making up all these names. No, it's the same thing. First of all, what was authorized after the Homeland Security Presidential Directive 6 was a terrorist screening center to consolidate the 14 terrorist lists by different agencies. All of this invention has to be an act of Congress. All of this has to come from Congress. They cannot just be making up things like that, and then we're going to put people on lists, and then we're going to send it distributed through the National Crime Information Center, and we're going to have citizen watchdog groups like Neighborhood Watch, like Citizen Corp, going after them, chasing them to the 7-Eleven when they go purchase an IC, and just, reporting back to the Fusion Center. And no, that has got to stop. And that is exactly what this is. That why the Congress, these Congress people need to know what is really the purpose of these name-changing things.
They truly do. They mention it as a fact, but it's really just their own invention. It's their bureaucratic shuffle that they are doing. Let's move on to what kind of concerns these 13 senators express in their letter. Distribution to multiple entities, use of the watch list to impact rights and access to financial services, employment licenses, etc., something you talked about. They are talking about it in their letters. These are the questions that you posed in your pleadings. Now the senators are questioning exactly the same questions. This is fantastic. They're asking about nomination process. They're concerned that the watch list is not limited to information about known and suspected terrorists, but also includes information about certain non-terrorists not meeting the low reasonable suspicion standard. Are they plagiarizing from you, Anna?
I love it. I love it. Finally, there's no stopping the tsunami. And I just absolutely love it, because the only alternative that the FBI has is to go there and perjure themselves. Because if they say the truth, they're going to have to call the marshals or the police there, the Senate representative police, and arrest them right there. They have to admit it eventually, because the documents are there. Everything leaves a paper trail. They're going to have to produce. If I was them, I want to see the contracts with the targeting, private companies doing targeting, that have targeting officials, and how much you have paid them, and what is how's been your delegation of law enforcement responsibilities delegated to private entities. I just think that's fabulous. The person that wrote that is writing that because they want to know about the targeted individual program.
Very likely. I also love that they called it a ratchet. They write, the watch list functions as one-way ratchet with names steadily added and rarely removed. That's beautiful writing. But this is exactly what it is. This is exactly what we've been talking about. And now the U.S. senators are asking Mayorkas and Garland and Ray and all these people that we're suing the same question. It's just a gift from God.
Like I have been saying, it's Hotel California. Once you check in, there's no way to check out. And it's hell, because you and I know the implications of it, even though we seem to be, so happy-go-lucky here. This is going to unleash testimony in Congress about the obliterated lives of people that have been placed on this list. And the silent Holocaust that has gone on, it's going to be out in the open, that the United States, the greatest, the freest nation in the world, has perpetrated the silent Holocaust upon so many millions of people.
Yes. I would say nothing stays forever. Sometimes forever is too late, but I hope that it's not the case. The letter that I'm referring to, the letter that we're still talking about by the 13 senators, asks the total of 34 questions. So Gary Peters asked his 8th question. But the depth of these 34 questions that these 13 senators asked is just mind-boggling. I just wanted to give you a taste of how much depth they have. For example, question number 4, for each of the last 5 years, how many individuals have been on the expanded selectee list? That's very specific. And how many U.S. persons are on the expanded selectee list? Sounds like they've been doing the same Excel spreadsheets that we did.
I think that expanded selectee list is really handling codes 3 and 4. That's what I think. We haven't done any discovery. And since the case from which we obtained this was a case that involved people on the suspected terrorist, which is handling code 2, well, they didn't really go into the discovery about the rest of the people on the rest of the list. So this is just fabulous, because it's going to start chipping away at the wall of confidentiality and plausible deniability, and it's all going to be out in the open. What's going to be interesting is that they're going to see the many millions of people going into this expanded selectee list vis-a-vis the watch list.
And there was also another category that the Senate report showed us, the exception category, that there's a 4th category. So there's a lot of discovery to be done. Totally agree with you. Let's see question number 24. Beyond the spouses and children of individuals on the watch list, what other categories of non-terrorists may be included as exceptions to the reasonable suspicion standard for placement on the watch list? This is your
And
question,
that,
Anna.
yeah, well, that goes to, there's two documents that we need to see. And we discussed this like 3 weeks ago regarding the federal regulations that require that before you put anybody on a list, you have to have at least reasonable suspicion, but that the Attorney General can make an exception that you don't comply with any of the requirements of that regulation. So we want to see Mary Garland's memo accepting the reasonable suspicion requirement from placing people on the TSCB, and also the 2018 memo by William Barr, former CIA director, who also, as Attorney General, issued, you remember we talked about it last week, discussing the Peters report, issuing some sort of authorization to add more people, more kinds of people to the list. Okay, so those are, they have to at least start there. There's probably much more. And William Holder was the one that probably started the exception to the reasonable suspicion criteria requirement. So those are the documents I think that they have to ask for. Where is the legal authority? That those people didn't have legal authority to do that. That's an ultra vires abuse of discretion act. But where did it come from? Because it did not come from Congress, which is what Kovac v. Ray is saying. In as much as the TSCB is not act of Congress, and it impacts the lives of so many in so many aspects.
Yeah, all these questions are so important. You can see the excitement on our faces when we read this letter. And here's the cherry on top. Question number 28. Does your department or agency provide any sort of incentive or reward to agents who make nominations to the TSDS or who make a match to the TSDS? And TSDS, of course, is a data set, but we know it's really database. Nevertheless, I think this question has been inspired by the FBI whistleblower, Stephen Friend. What do you think?
That's exactly it. He testified under oath before Congress that supervisors at the FBI were paid upwards $30,000 to $50,000 in bonus for placing people that inappropriately, that didn't match the criteria, and getting, for example, a search surveillance orders and that kind of thing. Basically, the conduct that they denounced, how the FBI has been weaponized against American citizens. Well, he said that between $30,000 and $50,000 was the bonus given to supervisors that were successful in convincing and persuading their special agents to put innocent Americans, to categorize them as domestic terrorists. I think that they should ask for the list of the supervisors that received the most bonuses throughout the past, let's say, 5 years, and then do a correlation of the nominations to the TSDB, and you're going to see that probably the most nominations, the highest increase to the TSDB came from those field offices where those crooked supervisors were forcing agents like Stephen Friend to improperly classify as domestic terrorists people that did not meet any terrorist criteria.
I wish that the senators who wrote this letter also watched our most recent episode from the last week when we showed that the FBI runs terrorist screening database as a business. That show resonated with a lot of our listeners, opened a lot of eyes.
I'm going to be writing to them and saying, here's a primer on a lot of things you have to, when you have them in front of you that you can ask. And also, not to be disrespectful, because obviously they know what they're doing, but we have a specialization that we have acquired in the course of our lives and of this case. The more information they have in order to do a nice, a very thorough cross-examination of the witnesses they get, the better. And that's what we have told everybody in the phone calls, in the targeted justice calls, particularly in Goji's call. We are encouraging all targeted individuals to send a letter. We know that criminal operatives are blocking emails. So do the effort of getting their fax numbers and fax them the letter or send that by snail mail with some sort of confirmation, because our lives depend on it. These people in Congress need to know, and make it not about yourself. Instead, make it about the plight of 300 to 400,000 Americans that are innocent and that should not be labeled as suspected terrorists because they do not meet the terrorist threat, and the money should not be spent following them around, and instead should be spent on schools and roads and bridges and whatever, but not following innocent people around.
So this is the end of our legal segment. The conclusion that I'm making is that the US senators are finally asking the same questions as in the historic lawsuit, Targeted Justice v. Garland, and that gives me hope. And now, for the second segment of the show, we prepared 5 most important things that happened to us in 2023. I prepared my own list, and Anna prepared her own list. Are you ready, Anna? Let's do the countdown. Okay.
Yeah, let's go.
Here it is, Anna's and Lan's number 5. Anna, Peters Committee investigation and report. To me, the January 11, 2023 filing of the historic lawsuit Targeted Justice v. Garland, it set the stage for the entire year, and that's why I put it in number 5. Number 4 on the Anna's list, Infant in the Quiet Skies program. It made regular people take a serious look at the TSDB. That story was a part of one of our shows, and I think you all know about it. There was a picture of an infant with a boarding pass that has 4 S's, and that means that that baby is a known or suspected terrorist.
Let me just add something here. I just put that because that is like the tip of the iceberg of a lot of disclosures of people placed on the list that have made it to mainstream media. Like, for example, James O'Keefe, like, other people too. It's just that the abuse of the TSDB is making it to the mainstream media. And I chose the infant story because it's the most ridiculous of them all. What it really is the collection of instances where people that are clearly not terrorists, like James O'Keefe, that we know he's there because of First Amendment violations, that it's coming out in the public, and it's causing outrage, and it's causing indignation, and it's causing Congress to look at this. That's why I chose that.
My number 4 was the resignation of the Terrorist Screening Center, or maybe Threat Screening Center, Director Charles Cable, only within weeks following filing of our historic lawsuit. To me, that meant that people in charge of this program are not invincible, that they're vulnerable, and they're afraid of consequences.
The statistics we have on the TIs that registered with me personally on the form is that over 65% of the people were placed on the list after 2017. He became the terrorist screening director in March of 2017. That is why it's so important that we get access to the TSDB, because every person that has been illegally placed there needs to know exactly when they were placed there. And he is the person that was in charge of condemning them to a life of torture, Charles Cable. And that's why within 2 weeks, He probably announced his resignation. We filed on January 11th. Probably announced his resignation immediately, because by the 31st of January, I don't know about federal government, but it is my understanding that they have to announce a couple of weeks before they leave. By January 31st, he retired. And you know what, then that is a victory. That is a triumph.
That's why it left such a mark on my psyche, and thinking back about 2023, that really stood out to me. That's why it's my number 4. Let's go see what's number 3 for Anna. That was Targeted Justice newsletter hit 10,000 subscribers.
First of all, the newsletter is considered a media organization. What it brings along with it, the rights and privileges of being a news media organization. And also is that targeted individuals are a force to be reckoned with. Targeted individuals have a voice that is channeled through this newsletter, that is written as accurately and fact-checked as possible, as it is feasible within the public information we get access to. And what is not there is this, that, we have 10,000 subscribers, but we have over 120,000 views, readings per month, which tells you that maybe most of the people that read our newsletter are not subscribed to it. And that is huge, because there's people that they're either know they're targeted, or they know about the program, they're afraid to subscribe, but the word is getting out. And to me, that is huge. We are no longer silenced, and even though they have tried to silence us, the power is in the numbers. It's 10,000, and it keeps on growing at a rate probably like 1,000 a month.
I have to agree. This tells me that targeted individuals as a group is no longer a fringe group. We are becoming a part of mainstream conversation. And that's why I agree with you on number 3. That's a good one. To me, the conundrum of the disappearing sentences, a story that we covered in our podcast, it really left a mark for me, because to me, it shows the government defendants' vulnerability. They took to such an extent to remove 2 sentences from the attorney's product using super extreme sophisticated hacking. That told me that yes, people in the government are afraid, and they go to such a length to cover up their tracks that they have to hack a computer that is not connected to the internet. I mean, the story just had a tremendous impact on me. So that's why I put it as number 3.
And it is so true, because in these investigations that these senators are going to be making, that is the key. You cannot place people, innocent people, without reasonable suspicion on any list. And the disappearing sentences that were people that have never been arrested, indicted, tried, convicted of any terrorist offense. That makes them really very nervous, because you cannot forever keep watch, have somebody like a person of interest for 20 years and not, because it's just not possible. And so that is what these senators that are investigating, and representatives, if they do, is those disappearing sentences, people that have never been associated to any terrorist activity.
All right, we're getting close. Number 2 for Anna, it's Missouri v. Biden, an important First Amendment case that was won at the district level and then was confirmed at the Fifth Circuit level at the U.S. Court of Appeals, where our case is currently in as well.
First of all, because it was so groundbreaking that a court finally acknowledged that, the FBI, with their little field office there in Twitter, they were making decisions on doing shadow banning and controlling the post by people that were not even influencers, people with like accounts of 1,000, 2,000 followers, which tells me these are targeted individuals, because it's not people that you would say, it was not ye or anything like that. That's the people that, according to Mataibi, that they were controlling, monitoring, doing surveillance at Twitter offices. And so it's just the intrusion of the government in private enterprise to suppress speech that percolates to all aspects of our society. And that is part of the targeting program, obviously, because a lot of us there are whistleblowers and people whose freedom of expression has been curtailed. But for me, Missouri versus Biden is going to, once the Supreme Court confirms it, which I'm absolutely certain they have to confirm it, it will confirm it, because it was so sound. The decision is so sound and so eloquent and so beautiful. That's when these house of cards are coming down of the interference with the constitutional rights of everyday Americans. And that's why, targeted individuals are in the forefront of the battle for freedom. And that is a responsibility that, even though it was imposed on us, sort of, I am very proud to be part of it. Very honored.
Yes, indeed. My number 2 was the Peters Report. That was our Christmas present, and the letters that followed that we discussed during our legal segment today. And drum rolls, please, because we are going to show our number 1. For Anna, it's our lawsuit, Targeted Justice v. Garland. And for me, it's a picture that says 1,000 words. I think that the credibility of Targeted Justice, of the organization that we all belong to, with a mission to fight for the rights of targeted individuals, the credibility has gone exponentially. We united people around our mission. We had a board meeting and an advisory board meeting that we published. Everybody can see what we have accomplished in this year with the media expansion, with our legal progress. So to me, my number 1 is the dramatic increase in the credibility of targeted justice.
I completely agree, because when I got here a little over a year ago, in September of 2022, oh my God, time goes fast, so fast. Everything was all over the place. Mr. Lighthouse will continue to work and stuff, but he was pretty much just doing it all. And so, yeah, you're totally right. We have been able to join forces to make a very solid team right now. Our advisory board is so much more solid than it was a year ago. And we are doing things. We are organizing, we're inspiring, and we brought hope to many people. You have no idea how many letters I get of people that tell me that I brought hope to their life, because over 200 lawsuits have been dismissed in the federal courts because, like Judge Rosenthal said, their allegations are fantastical or implausible. But the lawsuit that we crafted, the Targeted Justice v. Garland, it's based on mostly uncontroverted facts and documents. It's a document that is going to be there. Nobody can erase it. It's going to be there for history. To me, even though it was dismissed and we're now on the Fifth Circuit, it is the beginning of the end of the program. And that's why it's so, that's why that's my most important event of the year.
I agree. The fight continues no matter what. No matter what happens in the Fifth Circuit, the fight will continue. With that, Happy New Year to 2024 is just around the corner. Anna, would you like to say a few words to our viewers?
I just want to thank everybody for your priceless support to our organization and to us personally, for all your prayers. And I really hope that you can envision freedom and continue working hard for it along our side, because it is in the unity of so many people in the numbers. It's that the power is relies. So I just hope that you gather the strength and the hope and the impetus to continue this fight with us until we're all free. Happy New Year.
Thank you very much, Anna. As for me, I don't have any special feelings about the new year. It is a calendar date. It's a date when we change batteries in our fire alarms. It's a date when we turn a page in the book of life and put a bookmark down. It's not that important. What's important is our mission. What's important is the dedication of all the people who are trying to end the atrocities perpetrated so brazenly against our fellow citizens and our fellow human beings all over the world. I think I've said enough about it over the past year. Nevertheless, Happy New Year to you, our viewers and listeners. Thank you for all your attention, subscriptions, donations, your volunteering, your words of encouragement, and your trust. Every day, I'm trying to live up to it. Most importantly, I deeply respect you, targeted individuals. And to show my respect, I will do my best to be here with Anna every Sunday, rain or shine.